Liza writes, who were the Nephilim? Were they cavemen?
No, they weren't cavemen. If you read Genesis, it's kind of cryptic, but it's the daughters of the sons of men were very beautiful. And the sons of God looked on them and decided they wanted to mate with them. And so they had children, and the children were giants. And they were the Nephilim, supposedly.
You believe that? Perhaps even, let's compare it to the size of my head. Andre,
Deep within the recesses of human history lies a hidden truth so profound that it has been concealed from the masses for centuries. The Nephilim giants. A race of towering beings born from the union of humans and gods have long been shrouded in mystery and myth. From the ancient Sumerian tablets to the biblical account of Genesis 6 verse 4, these colossal creatures have been described as mighty warriors, wise sages, and rulers. Their existence has been echoed in the lore of ancient civilizations, from Greece's Titans to Norse mythology's Jotun. But what if these legends weren't just mere fantasy? What if the Nephilim giants, said to possess extraordinary strength, wisdom, and knowledge, still walked among us today? Join us as we shed light on proof that the Nephilim giants are still alive. Shocking! The dead ones are alive. The Nephilim have always been shrouded in mystery. The most famous mention of them comes from Genesis chapter 6 verse 4. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. But this verse leaves us with many questions. What exactly are Nephilim? The word might relate to falling or fallen ones, but its exact meaning is unclear. Are they people or something else entirely? And who are the sons of God? Are they humans or angelic beings? If they are angels, could their union with humans explain the great size and power of the Nephilim? The flood is said to have wiped out the Nephilim, but Genesis also suggests they appeared again after the flood. In Moses' time, spies reported on the Promised Land. They said it was a great place, but feared that Israel could not conquer it because the inhabitants were enormous. The Nephilim were mentioned there, as the giants known as the descendants of Anak were thought to be related to them. The Septuagint, an ancient Greek translation of the Old Testament, used the word giants for Nephilim. This isn't a direct translation, but a way to convey their massive size. In the Old Testament, giants often appear, especially with the Philistines, like Goliath. These giants were not angel-human hybrids, but simply very large people. The term Nephilim might have originally meant giant warriors, with some air of mystery. It's similar to how we use the word monster today. A monster can be something very large, like a monster truck, or it can mean something evil or supernatural, like a vampire or werewolf. From what we know, the Nephilim were likely enormous and fearsome warriors who seemed unnatural to those who saw them. While today's professional athletes like NBA or NFL players are extraordinarily large, this doesn't mean they are supernatural hybrids. Instead, the Nephilim of Moses' time might have been simply very large descendants of Anak. If that's the case, then their descendants could still be among us today, just as there are distant descendants of other ancient peoples. The genesis of the fallen ones. The Nephilim, these mysterious beings from ancient texts, are known by many names: the fallen ones, the giants, the Rephaim, and the dead ones. But who are they really? From where did these legendary figures come? According to the book of Genesis, the Nephilim were born from the union of divine beings, the sons of God and human women, the daughters of Adam. This union created giants and mighty warriors, known for their immense strength and stature. Legend has it that the Nephilim's existence played a role in bringing about the Great Flood, casting them in a negative light. Their name, Fallen Ones, seemed to suggest their fall from divine grace, and the flood narrative follows shortly after their mention in the Bible. However, this interpretation may not be entirely accurate. Genesis chapter 6 verse 4, which mentions the Nephilim, actually speaks highly of them. It praises their heroism and does not criticize them. The term fallen ones might simply refer to their divine nature being transformed as they took on a nearly superhuman yet human-like existence. The term Rephaim and the phrase dead ones are also used in the Bible but can be confusing. Rephaim isn't a separate name from dead ones, but rather describes a group of ancient giants. In biblical texts, the Rephaim are often depicted as mighty beings who, despite their strength, are eventually defeated by the Israelites, highlighting their role as formidable opponents who meet their end in battle. In Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 11, the Rephaim are portrayed as giants who face off against Israel. Their defeat by God's chosen people adds a dramatic twist to their story, making their name, a reference to their inevitable downfall, even more fitting. So the Nephilim and the Rephaim might be more interconnected than initially thought. These ancient giants, whether called Nephilim or Rephaim, are remembered as powerful and fearsome figures whose legacy continues to intrigue and captivate. The Horned Giants of Pennsylvania. In a New York Times article written on 1916, under the headline "Find Horned Men's Skulls, Remarkable Discovery by Archaeologists in the Susquehanna Valley," it was stated that Professor Skinner of the American Indian Museum, Reverend George Donahue, Pennsylvania State Historian, and Professor Moorhead of the Phillips Andover Academy uncovered a burial mound at the Murray Farm site while conducting research at Tioga Point in the Susquehanna Valley. In the mound, they uncovered the remains of 68 men, believed to have been buried around the year 1200 AD. According to the article, the average height of these men was 7 feet, with many being even taller. Also found with the remains were very large stone cacti and axes, further evidence of the men's gigantic size. Perhaps most interesting of all, some of the skulls had 2-inch bone protuberances on their foreheads. Well, this was something to explore. Looking through historical texts and documents, it is clear that giants have been a topic of interest for centuries. Not only are they mentioned in the biblical story of David and Goliath, but in fairy tales such as Jack and the Beanstalk and the legend of Paul Bunyan. One pervasive theory about giants is that they are actually Nephilim, the offspring of an angel and a human. Even some historical figures, such as Gilgamesh, are thought by some to have been giants. Many newspaper articles from across the country in the 19th and early 20th centuries claim to have found giant skeletons. Some accounts even call them a lost race of giant people, but many others hypothesize that they were giant Native Americans. An 8-foot-tall Native American skeleton was said to be found in Towanda, Pennsylvania in 1822. A headline from the World newspaper on October 6, 1895 read, "Biggest giant ever known, 9 feet high and probably a prehistoric California Indian." Some, like the Cardiff Giant, which was actually a buried stone statue, were proven to be hoaxes. Yet the stories still remain popular. Even Captain John Smith, in his account of meeting the Susquehannocks in 1608, described them as giant-like. But were there really giants roaming this land before us? Or horned giants, for that matter? Shocking revelation about the Horned Giants of Pennsylvania. After some further digging, it was discovered that the Horned Giants, found by Moorhead and others at Murray Farm, were not horned at all, nor were they giants. Professor Skinner wrote a corrected article for the New York Times, but it was not as publicized as the original, so it is harder to find. Apparently, while excavating the site, a workman shouted out that there are horns over the giant's head after discovering a bundle burial that had been covered with deer antlers. An excited visitor or reporter at the site heard this and asked another workman, who decided to play a joke and claim that the skeletons had horns growing out of their heads. Another version says that a disgruntled camp cook made up the story. This explains the story about the horns, but what about the supposed enormous height of these individuals and the other accounts of giants found nearby? It is thought that these skeletons, as well as accounts of living giant Susquehannocks, were not giant at all, but just taller than average. At the time, the average height of most Europeans was about 5 feet 6 inches tall, whereas Native Americans were thought to average about 6 feet tall. While 6 inches is not that big of a difference, anyone taller than 6 feet may seem like a giant to the generally shorter Europeans. Another reason for the discovery of giant skeletons is that these bones were often misidentified as human when they actually belonged to extinct animal species. It may seem far-fetched that anyone could misidentify a mammoth bone as that of a human, but other than the skull, human bones actually look very much like animal bones. So to someone not trained in osteology, a very large rib bone may seem like it is from a human skeleton. Many skeletal remains have been innocently misidentified this way, not only as giants, but as monsters or titans as well. Over time, it seems that this giant narrative of Native Americans by Europeans was exaggerated, and coupled with misidentified animal bones, resulted in the discovery of giant skeletons. However, these so-called giant skeletons always seem to mysteriously disappear after being excavated, leading many to believe that they either never existed, were misidentified animal bones, or were actually just a taller than average person. The Giants of Guadalcanal. The stories of the Giants of Guadalcanal are some of the best known. The largest island in the Solomon Islands, Guadalcanal is well known for its untamed landscape, deep jungles, and lofty mountains. There were once giants on this island that could reach 10 feet in height, according to local tales. Local tales described these giants as possessing a powerful muscular frame and reddish-brown hair. It was thought that they were nocturnal creatures, only coming out of their habitats in the forest at night to hunt and gather food. In addition to being extremely strong, these giants were rumored to have otherworldly powers, including the ability to move soundlessly, in spite of their enormous size. Although there are many stories of meetings between the giants and the islanders, ranging from amicable discussions to violent fights, they were solitary beings by nature and avoided human contact. Another well-known folktale about giants comes from the western province, specifically the Munda region. Before the Melanesian people arrived, the Munda giants were thought to have been the original occupants of the area. People revered these enormous beings as the land's protectors, keeping the natural balance and defending it against intruders. The locals treated these giants with a mixture of terror and reverence, frequently leaving offerings in an effort to win their favor. Giants are believed to have once resided in a number of caverns in the Solomon Islands. One famous example is the Baniata Cave on Rendova Island. There is a legend that claims a giant spent ages residing in this cave. Although the traditions surrounding these caverns are mainly legendary, some archaeological discoveries, such as enormous prehistoric artifacts and pottery, have sparked conjecture regarding the potential existence of a race of giants in antiquity. People often regard these caves as sacred sites. Even in modern times, there are sporadic accounts from locals claiming to have seen or seen giants. These contemporary sightings keep giant stories alive and feed folklore. While some think the islanders' vivid imaginations are the source of these tales, others think there may be some veracity to the legends. Legends from the area claim that these enormous creatures live in the island's isolated caverns, hilly areas, and deep jungles. The harsh, mainly uncharted terrain of the Solomon Islands makes for an ideal setting for these kinds of tales. Many island residents believe that the giants fled to these remote locations in order to live in seclusion and avoid contact with humans. Lovelock Cave, a tale of giants, or a giant tale of fiction. Lovelock Cave, known also as Bat Cave, Horseshoe Cave, Sunset Guano Cave, and Indian Cave, is located 20 miles south of modern-day Lovelock, Nevada. It's a very old cave that predates humans on the continent and, in prehistoric times, was underneath Lake Lahontan. In 1886, a mining engineer from Lovelock named John Reed was told of the legend by local Indians, who took him to the site to prove it existed. Reed was unsuccessful in getting an archaeological dig started immediately, but two miners, James Hart and David Pugh, realized the value of guano as an ingredient of gunpowder and created a company to start digging it out in 1911. They stripped a layer of guano from the cave approximately 3 to 6 feet deep, using a pick and shovel with little regard to the artifacts, and shipped some 250 tons of it to the Hawaiian Fertilizer Company in San Francisco. Archaeological explorations at Lovelock Cave. Alfred Kroeber, founder of the University of California Anthropology Department, was contacted by Hart and Pugh when they reported finding prehistoric artifacts. This spurred the first archaeological dig of Lovelock in 1912, led by Loud, also of the University of California. A second dig took place in 1924, and after finishing the excavations, Loud collaborated on a report that was published in 1929. What Loud found was nothing short of amazing. Approximately 10,000 archaeological specimens were uncovered, including tools, bones, baskets, and weapons. According to the report, 60 average-height mummies were unearthed. Duck decoys, among the oldest known in the world with feathers still attached, and a sandal over 15 inches long, were excavated. A donut-shaped stone with 365 notches carved along the outside and 52 corresponding notches inside was found, which some scientists believe is a calendar. Interestingly, radiocarbon dating, done on follow-up visits, found vegetable material dating back to 2030 BC, a human femur dating to 1450 BC, human muscle tissue dating 1420 BC, and basketry dating back to 1218 BC. Archaeologists concluded from this that human occupation of Lovelock Cave by this culture started in 1500 BC. Today's anthropologists call the people who lived in the area the Lovelock culture, with the period lasting some 3,000 years. Many archaeologists believe that the Lovelock culture was replaced by the Northern Paiutes. Unveiling the secrets of the Paiutes. The Paiutes, a Native American tribe indigenous to parts of Nevada, have an oral tradition that they told early white settlers of the area about a race of red-haired white giants or barbarians that their ancestors referred to as the Sitakar. The story was written down in 1882 by Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins, daughter of a Paiute Indian chief, in her book. These giants were described as being vicious, unfriendly, and cannibalistic. In this story, the Paiutes speak of a great battle that took place, which led to their extermination at a site known today as Lovelock Cave. During the early part of the 20th century, archaeologists found thousands of artifacts inside this cave, leading to a lengthy excavation of the site and speculation that the Paiute legend was real. The Paiute legend of the Lovelock Giants and their massacre at Lovelock Cave, Sitakar or Saiduka, literally translates as tule eaters in the Northern Paiute language. The tule is a fibrous water plant which, according to legend, was woven by giants into rafts to escape attacks by the Paiute. They used the rafts to navigate across what remained then of Lake Lahontan, an ancient lake that once covered most of northern Nevada during the last ice age. As the Paiute tale goes, after years of warfare, all the tribes in the area joined together to rid themselves of the Sitakar. One day, as the tribes chased down the last remaining red-haired giants, they took refuge in a cave. The Paiutes demanded their enemy come out of the cave and fight, but the giants refused. The coalition of tribes proceeded to shoot arrows at them while starting a large fire at the mouth of the cave. The smoke drove out a few who died in a hail of arrows, while the rest were all either burned alive or asphyxiated. Over time, the entrance to the cave would collapse, leaving it accessible only to bats and cut off from human contact. Thank you for watching. If you found this video interesting, do hit the subscribe button for more intriguing videos. Also, share with other exploration lovers.